experienced within our local Catholic Church was very deliberate for the purposes of mind control. It's not to say that all Catholics are bad. There's some very, very good, concerned Catholics who are as outraged as you and I are that that kind of abuse is going on in the church. They're as outraged as we became when we began to learn about this Boston connection. When we started hearing about the child abuse that was emanating out of Boston. It wasn't just child abuse, although that's absolutely horrific enough. It was a very systematic form of mind control, very much a part of MK Ultra. I've been talking about that Boston connection for over a decade. And I'm so glad to see that it's finally coming to light. And yet the most key part of what's actually going on has been left out of the equation once again. Mind control, understanding mind control, gives us a comprehension of what we're actually seeing and gives us an understanding of numerous aspects of not only what we're seeing in society, but on a global scale as well. Because it's a common thread that ties everything together. It's that last piece of the puzzle that pulls the whole picture into focus where we can actually fully understand what it is we're seeing. Because once we understand it, we no longer have to fear it. We're no longer left to superstition. We're no longer left to fearing what's coming next, what's coming next. Instead, we know. We know exactly what's going on, and we can think beyond what we're being told. We can think beyond what the media allows us to know. We can expand our thinking and learn to stand strong with a strength of spirit and soul conviction to make a positive difference in our own lives and in our own little areas of society. And ultimately that will expand further and further and further. But it begins with awareness. The abuse that I was enduring under MK Ultra mind control was so extensive that I lost all my awareness. I lost my ability to reason. I lost my ability to question anything. More and more, I could only do exactly what I was told to do with no ability to hope anymore, that there was some place. Not only was my whole environment saturated with this abuse, but I couldn't even think anymore to hope that there was some place where people were kind. I began losing my ability to think from about the age of 6 on, and it was quite an extensive progression over the next several years. This included going to the governor's mansion in Mackinac Island, Michigan. At that time, George Romney was the governor of Michigan, and he was very much interested in taking a powerful form of mind control gleaned from the Catholics, taken from the CIA and the Hitler-Himmler research, and also into the technological advancements, and put it into his Mormon church. George Romney was very active and very high up in the Mormon church, and they could foresee that as a strong opportunity for being able to lead people in a religious way. People are easily led by a religion because they do want to do what God tells them to do, but the religion that they're being taught is outside themselves, when in fact that spirituality and relationship with God is within. And yet religion can pull people down a path outside themselves where they're more easily led and controlled, particularly when systematic abuses are going on and MK Ultra mind control and technological advances are being used as strong as they were in the Mormon church. That's not to say all Mormons are bad. There's quite a few Mormons who are standing up once they're able to think for themselves to make a positive difference and stop the abuse in their churches as well. But that's a little bit slower. The devastation wreaked on people within the Mormon Church is extensive, and it's very much like the abuses that go on in the Jehovah's Witnesses church that has just come into light, where the mind control is so prevalent there as well. And every time where the mind control is prevalent, there's always abuse, and it's usually sexual abuse of the children. We need to become aware of how people are being led this way. When we have politics that have no separation of church and state, it allows for them to dictate or to provide the information through the churches on a political agenda as well. And it's a very dangerous and a very powerful combination, yet nevertheless is all moving towards the same goal of a mind control of the masses. In Mackinac Island, Michigan, I also heard George Romney talk about what is now known as global education, where bringing a form of mind control into the education system and altering the history, and also pumping information into the children's head at a rate to where they lose their ability to discern and to creatively utilize the information, but nevertheless it's just being pumped into their head, especially with the onset of computerization and harmonics coming through the headphones while they're sitting at some of those computers. The computers were also deliberately designed to alter the history that they were being taught, because it was believed that to control the future, all they needed to do was control the history. Again, alter that knowledge base so that when they do formulate any thought or action, it's based on something that's totally false. Without these key elements in their history, the children were being socially engineered into another direction. So we've got several generations now where this kind of social engineering has perpetuated through the school systems. Fortunately, there are a number of people who became aware of this, particularly when Bill Bennett was the Secretary of Education and had said that every child in this country should be taught by a Jesuit. The Jesuits are the intelligence arm of the Vatican, and was very much corrupted into bringing what Adolf Hitler said was a way to mass mind control generations. It was Adolf Hitler who said that if there were any free thinkers left in society, he wasn't concerned because he had control of the minds of the children through the education system. That was something that I heard Bill Bennett quote himself in the application of the global education into the system. My experience in MK Ultra, once it was on a White House Pentagon level, included working under Bill Bennett, which was how I was privy to that information as well. And I had seen it as a young child in Mackinac Island, Michigan, when it was first being implemented by George Romney. Michigan had soared to the top of the education system back in those days, and now, of course, we've had the global education just permeate through our schools. But fortunately, the people have become more aware and are waking up, and there's more and more homeschooling that's going on, which is very much a solution. But it's also important that people are re-educated to what history actually is, and people like Wendy, who are making those kind of efforts in their own areas of life, who are aware of it, are what is key to undoing this tangled mess of social engineering and mass mind control that has permeated our society and brought us to this point that we're looking at today. My owner in MK Ultra mind control was U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. Senator Byrd has been in office longer than I've been alive, and he's still in office today. He's been head of our Senate Appropriations Committee, which means that he decides how money is going to be spent, how it's going to be delegated, and he has made sure that more and more states' rights are lost in favor of federal intervention. And that was how global education was brought into the school systems as states' rights were overridden. The last holdout for states' rights in the education system was in the state of Alabama under Governor Fob James, who said that the federal government has no business meddling in the minds of our children. And he turned down all federal funding in order to maintain freedom of thought, in order to maintain a base of truth in the history in the school systems. And yet, I also watched the progress where the federal government came in and took away the states' rights and just simply overrode it. Based on what? Senator Byrd is very learned in the Constitution. I think he knows more about the Constitution than anybody I've ever encountered, that's for sure. And he can quote the Constitution much the way that a Satanist can quote the Bible, where they can take the information or they can take the words and twist them around and use semantics and switch them to fit their own agenda. And it sounds plausible, and surely you can read it right there, but it's out of context nevertheless. It's what they say. They're capable of doing it. And Senator Byrd was manipulating our Constitution to the point where the New World Order agenda took firm hold. Now we're seeing where our Constitution is just simply being eroded more and more. I'm deeply concerned for the recent events here in the state of California, where the governor here, who is not an American-born citizen, has an enormous movement going to change the Constitution in order that he be able to run for president. This governor that you all have is a good friend of George Bush's, and I've seen this forthcoming and have even talked about it now for nearly a decade, and yet it wasn't as pertinent as it is today. Hopefully the information will reach people enough to where they're going to realize that as you see more and more of your state's rights eroding, it's for a specific purpose. But money, again, is ultimately at the top of all this and is dictating this New World Order agenda. There's a massive amount of greed that continues to run and permeate our society. The different criminal operations that I was forced to participate in during the Reagan-Bush administration are detailed in our book, Transformation of America. That information was compiled for Congress as testimony, and when, upon the advice of federal attorneys, the information was released en masse in 1995. There's a number of, particularly then, there were a number of people in Congress who know how essential it is that good people have a knowledge base of truth and wake up and see what is going on in our country, to begin to realize how this transformation of America was taking hold far more so than it ever did in Nazi Germany. Mark and I just returned from Europe, and like he was saying, we spoke in Germany, and that was quite an experience. And to see so many people who have been affected by mind control directly, who have seen it in their own families, who are acutely aware of what social engineering is in society. They know what's happening in the United